guys, it's me Vampy and I'm back today with another craft tutorial. Today I'm going to teach you how to make fake stained glass. People who have been following us on YouTube and social media know that we just announced we're doing a Vampy movie and we're super excited about it, but having almost zero budget for set dressing and things like that, we have to get a little bit creative. So there's a scene in the end of the film, I'm not going to give too much away, where we're in a chapel and I wanted some beautiful sort of bat stained glass to be in the background, and real stained glass is very expensive and I didn't have the time or the patience to learn how to do that. So I was like, how can I do this? How can I do it cheap, easy, at home with stuff that I already have that's not going to cost me heaps of money? And there's heaps of different ways to do it. If you have a look online, there's lots of different tutorials. They didn't really have the desired effect that I wanted, so I've sort of come up with my own little hacks on how I do it, and that's what I'm going to show you today. So first things first, you're going to need to start with a template, and I have chosen a bat, obviously, because it's the Vampy show, and it's just one that I've just literally drawn on a piece of paper here, so sort of resembles a vampire bat face. And I just started by sketching this out in pencil on a piece of paper, and then I went in and defined it and gave it some extra sort of straight lines where, if it was glass, where the soldering lines would go. To do this, you're only going to need a couple of things. You're going to need paint, you're going to need clear glue, you're going to need hot glue gun sticks or PVA, depending on which way you want to do it. And then obviously you're going to need a piece of plastic or a piece of glass. So we'll be using plastic today. It's a little bit easier to work with. You can cut it a lot easier. You don't need a glass cutter. So before we get started, I've just put down this white sheet of paper. That's partly because we're working with a see-through media and we need to be able to see colours and lines and things like that. Also, it's just a good way to make sure that you're, I guess, colouring inside the lines. And I'll put this little pattern up on my Patreon or social media as well if anyone else wants to sort of give it a go, but it is really easy to draw your own. So the first step that we're going to do is, this is just an old Perspex sign frame holder. I wouldn't worry too much about that, we're going to cut it at the end anyway. And what I've done is I've just popped this underneath and I've just traced it with a Sharpie, just so that we have it on here. You don't have to use a Sharpie on the plastic or the glass, whatever you're using. If you don't want to, you can just leave the template there. The reason that I do is if it moves around, if something gets knocked, I know exactly what I'm doing and I don't need the template anymore. So these lines are going to be covered in the fake soldering iron metals anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So we're going to need paintbrushes. We're going to need this. It's clear glue. This is called clear gum glue. I don't think it really matters as long as it's clear. That is going to be mixed with the paint, or food dye actually works really, really well because it has a more transparent look in the sun than acrylic paints. To do the actual outlines, what I've seen is a lot of people get Elmer's glue or just white PVA glue and mix it with a black paint or a puff paint, and they sort of squeeze that on over the lines. The reason I didn't like that is when it dries, it doesn't hold those ridges that stained glass has, and yeah, it's also really hard to control. So we're going to do something a little bit different, but that is an option. If you have just regular PVA at home, you can use that as well. So we're going to decide what colours we want and then we're going to start painting, and I'll show you some techniques for doing that. So this one is sort of like a brown and yellow, so more of like a realistic, I guess, kind of colours for a bat. I did one that was black and red with red eyes. Another sort of, I guess, yellowy sort of flying fox coloured bat. And then this one was actually just greys and pinks, which I really liked. And again, the really light colours, they look really good in the sun. So first up, once we've chose our colour, let's go with this one here. A lot of the tutorials say don't use a lot of the paint, just use a lot of the gum and just slightly tint it. But I found you actually do have to use quite a lot of paint. So I'd say maybe 40-60 ratio with the clear glue. The good thing about acrylic paint is if you don't like it, you can just wipe it off and start again. Or if it's dry, you can scratch it off and start it again. And regardless of the color and ratios that you're using, it is really important to mix it really, really, really well. If you don't, when you hold it up to the sun, you will see little brush marks from the paintbrush, and you'll also sort of see the ink bleeding into it. And we want it to look as realistic as we can for a cheap sort of fake glass. So I'm going to do the main body of the bat in this color here. And what you want to do is sort of color inside the lines. You don't want to lay it on too thick. You still want to sort of be able to have that transparency when you put it up in a windowsill or something, hold it up to the sun, like so. And with stained glass, the good thing is there's no rules, so you can literally do every little segment a different color if you want to. For time purposes, I'm going to do a majority of the face in the same blue color. You also don't want it to be too thin. So if you can see it like this, you don't want that, because when you hold that up to the sun, you're going to see every single streak mark. You want to sort of, so this is also why I like to draw on the template. It's just easier to sort of map where you're going. And as you're going, if you're a little bit worried, when you have it on the white, see, you wouldn't be able to see this if I had it on the black table. When you have it on the white, it looks very different to when you have it up in a window. So what I like to do is, as I'm sort of going, it looks really saturated, the color looks really good, but then if I actually hold that up, like to the candlelight there, you can sort of see a couple of little gaps that you've missed, or bits that may be lighter than other parts. And because we want that glass effect, we're going to try and make it as even as possible. Best to do one color and then sort of wait a little bit for it to dry, but you don't have to. It just makes it a little bit easier. The reason I'm not now is because I want to get this done so I can show you the final step, so I probably won't paint the whole thing, but the reason being is the colors do blend together and bleed together a little bit if you don't let it dry in between each color. And again, it doesn't really matter too much because there's going to have very thick lines to define each little section anyway, but it can sort of have that tie-dye effect, which we want to try and avoid, because again, we're trying to mimic real stained glass and we want it to be realistic. Alright, so I'm not going to paint any more of this back because I want it to dry in time for me to be able to show you the next step. So I'm just going to pop that to the side here. And what my secret hack is, I haven't seen anyone else do this before, so I think I'm pretty ingenious for thinking of it, is I wanted it to have that thick solder look, and all the glues that I tried just didn't cut it. So what I did is I actually got some black hot glue gun sticks, and they just go in your regular crafting guns, and that way it comes out, it dries almost immediately, and you have really good control over the lines, the thickness, the shape, and everything like that. And you don't have to use black. They are a little bit harder to find. Like, you can find them online anyway, they're pretty cheap, but just in your regular sort of $2 shops and stuff, they are hard to find. You can use your clear glue sticks, and then once it dries, go over it with like a gold or a silver marker or something like that, like a paint pen, and give it that metallic look. I like the black because I like everything black. That's why I chose those. Another little hack is, if you're going to be changing between colors, which I did, instead of using a whole stick and then having to waste everything else that's left in the gun, I sort of cut them in half and then just feed that into the gun, so I'm using exactly the right amount, and then clean it out with like a clear glue stick. So So as I mentioned at the start of this video, if you don't have any of this stuff, this is your other option for drawing the lines. And this is just plain white PVA craft glue. And what I've done is I've just tinted it with black paint, just plain acrylic paint. Doesn't have to be clear or anything fancy. And this one's good because it has a little nozzle. I don't know if there's much left in here, but you just slowly sort of squeeze that out into whatever shape you need for the glass. And it works fine. The only thing with this, whether you do it on glass or plastic, is it dries a little bit flatter, and I really wanted that thick soldering look. So that's another option for you. And again, it depends what look you're going for. I find the hot glue gun so much easier. I use hot glue for almost all of my crafts, so I'm pretty familiar with the glue gun, and it just works better for me, and I think it looks better. So this was kind of, I guess, like my learning hurdle, because I tried everything on this one, which is why it looks a little bit hodgepodge. But this is where I sort of realized to get a black that looks black in the sun, you have to go quite dark and pigmented. And the grey, which I found out isn't a great colour for stained glass because it looks very brushy, unless you want that sort of mottled glass effect, which is also a thing. And the red worked really well, and that was not actually acrylic paint, that was red food dye mixed with the clear glue gun. So yeah, the food dyes work really, really well. And again, I'm not sure if you can see, but on the table, it looks completely different. So this one is meant to be Dracula holding a victim. And I did the different coloured blue hues to sort of resemble nighttime, obviously, with the full moon there. And this one, I think the actual paint colour worked a lot better. And then I experimented with a gold hot glue gun stick, but it was actually wax. So it doesn't work as well as the glue. I mean, you can use it. I just wanted that gold colour because I think it looks cool. And this one is glass, so you could put it back in the frame. You could get a glass cutter if you're wanting to cut the edges off, but I'm just going to leave it as it is because that's a lot of work I don't have time for. Yeah, but I'll show you how to cut the Perspex ones later as well.